Just a gorgeous morning here in South Texas. I pray the sunlight of God's grace is finding its way into your life today. And if you need God's grace, boy, do I have a good story for you. The story of the moment that Peter denied Christ and the time that Christ never forgot Peter. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you can relate to these moments in the crucifixion narrative in which Peter denied the Christ who came to save him, but Christ never forgot the Peter he came to save. I can relate to that story. Maybe you can too. If you don't have 8 minutes, however, to hang around to discuss it, please, no worries. We've all got a lot going on. But if this is the message you think the Lord wants you to hear today, a reminder of His relentless grace, His ridiculous grace, then hang around. Hang around. I know I'm going to date myself when I talk about this, but I wonder if any of you can relate to the Roadrunner cartoons and Wile E. Coyote. Post it on the page there if you know who I'm talking about. Wile E. Coyote, the bird suddenly stops and the coyote tries to stop and he can't. Remember how he skids past the Roadrunner out into the edge of the cliff and the ground gives way every time. And those in the cartoon, for just a moment, we can see Wile E with his big saucer eyes. He realizes he's about to fall and poof, he gives it that, oh boy, this is going to hurt look, and down he goes. Wile E. Coyote and I have a lot in common. In my life, many times I too have ventured too close to the edge. And I have found myself on shaky ground. And I've taken a fall and I've stared down into that, oh boy, this is going to hurt canyon. And I've looked up from the bottom of the pit and I've been dazed and I've been stunned and I've been wondering how to get out. You see, Wile E. Coyote, he's got it made. I mean, he's invincible. He never gets hurt. The falls don't faze him. I mean, he's barely hit the ground. Then the next scene, there he is doing it again, stacking Acme dynamite or painting a wall that's supposed to make it look like a tunnel. He's always trying to, pull his tricks. But within moments, he's out of the pit and he's back on the trail. You and I, we don't recover quite as quickly, do we? It takes us a while. I may be talking to somebody who's trying to recover right now. You got too close to the edge and you find yourself in the canyon, stunned and hurt and wondering if this ravine has a way out. Few of us have fallen more severely and landed in a pit deeper than Peter's, which is ironic because in the story of the crucifixion of Christ, the crucifixion narrative, remember, he was high on the pinnacle and far from the pit. He was the one who pulled out the sword there in the Garden of Gethsemane and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. Do you know that part of the story in John chapter 18? I just envisioned Peter smugly standing next to Jesus, flashing his sword as if to say, step aside, Jesus, I'll take care of these interlopers. I'll take care of this one for you. My hunch is that he, felt pretty Rambo there in that moment, that he was then stunned when Jesus told him, no, put your sword away, and he healed the servant's ear. Next thing Peter knew, the Savior and the soldiers were headed down the hill. And Peter was left alone to make a decision. He could have gone with the other disciples and hid in the shadows. He could have ducked into every available corner and pantry in Jerusalem, or he could have followed Christ. But interestingly, he chose to do neither. Luke is the gospel writer who told us that Peter followed Jesus, but did so from a distance. 22 in verse 54. Not too close, not too far, near enough to see him, but not near enough to be seen with him. He kept his distance from Christ. He just he didn't know. See, I get the impression he just didn't know what to do. Fear and faith were at war with one another, And rather than go hide or rather than take a stand, he tried to land right in the middle. Do you know, as I know, that really that middle ground is treacherous ground? It turned out to be a big mistake for Peter. He was warming his hands on a hearth, and people began to recognize him, one after the other, one question after the other. He was recognized, and then rather than take a stand for Christ, he denied Christ. There, warming his hands on the devil's hearth, a young girl recognized him and asked him, "Wait a second. You're one of that man's followers, right?" "Oh, no, I'm not," he defied. Moments later, he was asked the question again. Aren't you one of that man's followers? And a second time, Peter denied the Lord. Third question came, this time from a relative of Malchus. "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" And this time it wasn't enough for Peter just to deny Christ. He cursed the very thought of it. Matthew 26:74. With each denial, Peter inched closer and closer and closer to the edge of the canyon until finally the ground gave way and he fell. And it tore him up. He realized what he did. He realized he had denied Christ. And he repented with tears. He repented with tears. In the possibility that I might be speaking to somebody who has stumbled across this message and can relate to Peter, and you wonder if Christ could ever forgive you for what you have done, can I remind you that when Christ was resurrected from the grave, he told those who found him, who discovered the empty tomb on that beautiful Easter morning, "You go tell the disciples and Peter to meet me in Galilee." Jesus knew what Peter did. Jesus knew how Peter felt, and Jesus knew what he could do with a repentant heart. And he received the confession of Peter, and he forgave him. And consequently, Peter, the one who denied Christ, was proclaiming Christ within 50 days on the day of Pentecost. Friend, Jesus will do that with you. Maybe you can relate to Wile E, Coyote. I can too. And maybe you find that you're down in the pit right now. Listen, turn your heart back. Turn your heart back. Don't pretend you didn't do anything wrong. Just confess. Confession softens us. Confession of our faults re-engages us. It's that bridge upon which, honesty is that bridge upon which we walk in our return trip to God. He loves you, friend. You're never, ever alone, even when you feel like you're in the pit. Just ask the Apostle Peter. All the best to you today.